And I did change the names not to protect the innocent. I used it to protect me. That's where my lawyering skills came into play.
After 40 years in law and finance, Larry Preston turned to writing in his retirement and recently released his first novel, Forged Fates. The novel centers around characters in the art forgery arena. As the story unfolds, the mystery deepens as characters connected with a murdered art conservator become increasingly entangled. In our conversation today, we chat about the process of writing and publishing this book. Larry, thank you so much for being on the Temple Arts podcast. As an author, you have an illustrious career in law and in banking, and now you can add author to your resume. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Can you describe a little bit of what it was like to write a novel?
Well, Thor, before I jump into that, I will say, yes, I did law and finance, banking, investments for 40 years. And I joke with friends that now that I'm retired, I get to do what I really love, which is arts and flowers. Yeah. And encompassed in arts really is writing. And so it's been a huge pleasure writing that book. I very much enjoyed it. I had the thought for this book in my mind sitting at a airport bar in Kansas City after I spoke at a conference. And I etched out in really quick fashion the storyline and thumbnail sketches of each one of the characters. And then it sat for about 7 years until I retired from TriStar, and I finally had a chance to sit down and work on it basically every day.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that process of working on the book and the disciplines that you developed in order to develop the characters and put pen to page, so to speak. Did you have a process for that?
You have to write pretty much every day. And there is a phenomenal writer, David McCulloch, who does nonfiction. He does historical documentary type things. And he said, they always ask me the question, how much time do you spend on research and how much time do you spend on writing? He said, the big part they always leave out is how much of the time you spend on thinking. And really, that is the biggest part, because you have to come up with, what is the storyline? What do you want your characters to say? Where is the whole drama going? How do you end each chapter so someone wants to go to the next chapter? So the biggest part of writing a book is having the discipline to just sit and think about what you want to do. And then once you have that, you've got to pretty much write every day. You got to sit down in front of your computer and start working on that chapter. And I would tell myself a lot of days, I'm just going to write 1,000 words today, whatever that is. And then you start writing, and next thing you know, it's a couple thousand words. But the hardest part for me was, because it's my first novel, I had no idea what the heck I was doing, was my good friend Paul Chafee was my editor and publisher. And basically, he was my editor. He was not my publisher. He was the editor and publisher of the Saginaw News. Basically said, you got to rewrite a lot of this. So then you go back and you write it. And then when I finally got a publisher, she said, hey, I'll take your book on, but you got a lot of work to do on this book. And I had to go back. And so some of those chapters have been written and rewritten 6-7 times. And that part was hard. To go back and redo it again to try to get it to the point that it's professional.
Yeah, it's interesting to consider the difference between writing something for yourself and having an end result of that, having that story in your head and have it down, and then having a certain commercial viability to the end product, and having those team members on board that are guiding the process of moving the story and in the book into a position that it is. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and maybe the length of the process? Was that what you expected? Was it different than you expected?
I really had no idea. I can tell you this, 2 or 3 times I was ready to give up. Just because I never thought it was going to get to be the point that someone would want to read it. And but a couple of people read what I had done, and Paul Chafee, for one, was a big cheerleader. But the key turning point for me was my publisher. And I like this story because as a first-time writer, to find a publisher is almost impossible. That's why, a lot of people are self-publishing. They can't find a publisher. So I reached out to this woman. We talked. She goes, send me the document. Send me your manuscript. Don't get your hopes up. He goes, I only take 1, maybe 2 books a year. So don't think this is going to go your way. I'll get back to you Wednesday. So Wednesday, I sat and wait all day long. In the morning, in the afternoon, 8:30 at night, she finally calls me. And Thor was funny because she goes, okay, I didn't read your whole manuscript, but this is what's wrong. This is what's wrong. This is what's wrong. I go, well, I guess we're not working together. No, I actually really like the book, but you got a lot of work to do. And, that gave me the feeling that, maybe this is all justified and people will find it interesting to read. And I hope they do. I don't know if they will. I hope they do.
Yeah.
So there was that process of getting a little cheerleading from time to time to help you. It's a lot of research, though. If you read through the book, you'll see that a lot of things I had to research that are outside the scope what I normally talk about. Murder's not an easy business, and I've never done it before. So that was interesting. And a lot of the art background, and particularly forgery, that is really a complicated subject. And to get into and see what forgers really do to be successful.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that research process that you went through. Were you reading books, looking at articles, interviewing people? Because as I read through the book, it's a work of nonfiction, but you certainly have laced it with some factual information that's very informative in terms of the basics of the way that the forgery and conserving artwork work.
It all started actually when I was an undergrad. I was dating a woman who wanted to be an art conservationist. Who wants to be an art conservationist? Nobody, but she did. And she was really smart. In fact, in my book, Adam Lindmark talks about the degrees he had to become art conservationist, fine arts, art history, and physics. And that's what this woman had. She was really brilliant. And the last time I checked, she is now the senior art conservationist for the Smithsonian. So she got me very involved in thinking about conservation. And when she was doing some internships, she found some forgeries. So I got excited about reading about that. And then the whole world of forging and selling paintings and stealing paintings. I mean, that is just a vast wealth of interesting things to look up and read. And so I did a lot of that to sort of lay the groundwork. Now, on the forgery side, there's some phenomenal books out there. They're all out of print now. So I had to go and find some books, even though we're out of print, and get them. The Forger's Handbook was very helpful. I mean, it's like a 300-page or 400-page book, step by step, for the different type of arts. How do you forge a painting? And then you complement that with the other things you're reading to come up with a fuller story. But I love that. I love the research side and reading about all that. It was really interesting.
Yeah, what you're describing, it's an education for yourself as well.
Was.
A really
absolutely.
Experience.
That's half the fun of writing. So it all breaks down, I would say 50% is thinking, and then it's 25-25 for research and writing.
Yeah. Now, in the book, you used a lot of places that are local to Saginaw. Perhaps the names have been changed. Do you find that having those places that you perhaps frequent in real life, how you were that helped? Do you find that helped translate into a fictional environment? What degree of sort of inspiration from the real world did you use when you were developing the environment?
2 levels of that. First of all, if it's just a place, then I think it's a huge advantage to know a place well and talk about what you know. I mean, it brings the writing to life a lot more. And I did change the names, not to protect the innocent. I used it to protect me. That's where my lawyering skills came into play. For sure. The book starts right off at, Jack's 1966 Bistro. And if anyone's been in our community, we know exactly what that is. And that was fun to write that. And anyone that reads the book, it ends exactly at the same table at the same place. So Takes place in Midland. So there's a make-believe country club in Midland that has a make-believe women's golf tournament. Well, if you're in our area at all, you know, pretty good idea. Maybe I'm talking about that if change the names. So yeah, that's very important. I love it.
Yeah. You know, looking towards the future, now that you got one book under your belt, do you feel like it's something that you want to continue to do, maybe in a different way? Or how do you feel like you're going to use the experiences that you've had in the writing process, in the publishing process, into the future? Or do you feel like now that you've accomplished this goal, you've reached that goal, that you'll try doing something else?
No, I'm actually about 60% finished with my sequel.
Okay.
And there's a couple characters the same, but really it's pretty much new cast of characters that sort of tie into the old story. And I actually think my new characters are in some ways more interesting, fascinating, and more fun to write about. And I think that's a big part of it. It's just fun writing about these characters. A couple of people have asked me about the dialogue and stuff I used in there. With Thor, you reach a certain point, these characters really write, you know what they're like, and you're writing something and you stop and go, no, that person wouldn't say that. You have to go back and rewrite it to keep the person in character.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Larry, thank you again for sharing your talent with us and with the community. We'll look forward to that sequel down the road, and it's real inspiration to see the way that you've developed your art and the way that you are using that.
Well, thanks, Thor, but I need to do a little plugging. We're having a meet and greet the author. People can purchase a book and have it signed by the author here at the Saginaw Art Museum, November 17th from 6 to 8 o'clock. And if you're interested in purchasing anything online, you can go to my website, www.larryprestonauthor.com.
Excellent. We'll look forward to hosting you here at the museum. Thank you for listening to the Temple Arts Podcast. Please consider subscribing to the podcast and making a donation to the arts through SaginawArtMuseum.org or TempleTheater.com. This will allow us to continue to bring enriching program to Saginaw and beyond.